So my name is Bob Seddigh. I'm a VP of Cloud Engineering for Atos, and I'm currently based in London. For those of you close enough to the front of the stage to be able to count the rings under my eyes, I think you can correlate that to the number of hours difference between London and San Francisco. So in today's session, we are going to look at the role of hybrid clouds in accelerating transformation to cloud. It is a really big topic. It is quite complex. There's a lot of technologies involved, so we can really only scratch the surface. But before we start that, I'd like to just make a quick introduction about what Atos is, who we are, and what we do. So Atos are a global digital services leader operating in 73 different countries. We've got in excess of 120,000 people with an annual revenue of circa 12 billion euros. We provide quite a wide variety of IT services, spanning from digital transformation, managed services, application development, application transformation, security, big data, you name it, we do it. Well-established organization. April of last year, we announced a global enhanced alliance partnership with Google, focusing on hybrid cloud, machine learning, AI, digital workplace, and security. And I'm very proud that this year we've been recognized as the Google Cloud Global Breakthrough Partner. So Atos and Google are driving 6 distinct innovation tracks focusing on increasing application agility, enabling SAP on cloud, IoT, enhanced real-time collaboration, artificial intelligence, and secure hybrid clouds. So the agenda for today. In today's session, we're going to start by putting a little bit of business context around what it is that enterprises are striving to do. And we're going to try to drill down from that position into what sort of transformations need to take place. We're also going to look at some of the typical challenges the enterprises experience and how working with a trusted partner can alleviate some of those burdens. And we'll move into the role of holistic hybrid clouds in helping to accelerate. And hopefully I'm going to be able to get the time to also spend a few minutes to tell you about a product launch that we did this Tuesday at Google Next for our newest hybrid cloud offering. And we'll close this session with a bit of Q&A, and if there isn't sufficient time, I'm more than happy to take questions after the session, and obviously we'll be at the stall the entire day. So regardless of the sector an enterprise organization is operating within, there are quite a lot of common themes that we all strive to achieve today, especially in the context of a global digital market. We see these themes across pretty much all of our customers, and actually we recognize those exact same things internally within our own organization. And they're relatively simplistic. We all strive for agility, the ability to be the disruptor rather than the disrupted. We strive to have data-driven businesses where the decision-making is based on analytics and real-time data. We want to increase our revenue base through the introduction of differentiated offerings, and we want to do that in a way where we are cost controlling and making sure the solutions that we're pulling together are cost optimal and competitive. So to achieve these aims, there is quite a lot of change that's required. Business processes need to change in order to provide agility. Security processes need to change in order to provide agility, and equally our application development methodologies themselves need to be changing to give you that agility. Looking at a data-driven decision-making sort of scenario, again, your application space needs to be able to support that. There needs to be a consolidation of your data in order to be able to effectively apply machine learning and analytics to your data. And equally, from a revenue and cost perspective, well, in order to actually find what's a differentiator in the market, you need real data and you need the real analytics against that data to understand what the demand in the market is. Automation plays an absolutely huge part in ensuring that we got a cost-effective solution and we're able to control the costs and be competitive. And equally, cloud-native solutions enable you to really, it's the utility model. It's utilizing resources at the point you need them, being able to scale up and down in line with the agility of your business. So I want to drill down another level further down from this and look at really what are the transformational spaces that we need to look into. So from a business process perspective, this is the absolute bare minimum. We need to enable the business to be able to make decisions based on data and analytics. IT operations, majority of the organizations we work with are still ITIL-based. They use IT service management tooling in order to manage the environments and processes. And to achieve the actual agility that we require, we need to start moving more and more towards DevSecOps. You're going to hear me repeat the word DevSecOps over and over in this, and hopefully it's nothing new to anyone here, but it's actually a really complex and really hard space to get into, especially when your starting point is traditional IT operations. Security. Again, embedding security in the application development space as opposed to it being a wrapper after the fact. And the bigger challenge at the moment is we're in the era of multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, on-prem solutions, and coming up with processes and technologies and tools that actually are able to effectively span all three of those spaces to give you a consolidated view of your security is a tough task. Similar with your processes around security. Not unlike the rest of IT services, I think automation is absolutely key within the security space. So we need to look at the ways of automating security processes, security testing, security governance within our, essentially, is things like our CI/CD pipelines, policy-driven architectures, whereby we can articulate policies, the security policies and other business policies in a way where the technology can enforce them. And anyone who is working in sort of regulated industries or with governmental bodies will be aware of the amount of work that needs to be done with the legislative bodies, with the government bodies, in essentially trying to bring them up to speed with the cloud-native technologies. They have to go on the same transformation and understanding and learning that we all do, and we have to bring them along with us. So this is not a short-term fix, and it's going to take some time. And later on, we will look at some ways that we can try to help accelerate at least parts of this process so that the whole thing is not a serial. Application development. Back to DevSecOps, putting the appropriate practices in place so we are able to effectively get agility out of our application development space, putting the right quality assurance and testing capabilities, including the security we touched upon, within our CI/CD pipelines, adoption of all these new technologies, so Kubernetes, cloud functions, X as a service. By X as a service, I'm talking about things like PaaS, SaaS, database as a service, AI, ML as a service, big data as a service. So all of those types of technologies need to be adopted. Why do they need to be adopted? Because they form the building blocks of your applications. Your applications developers do not have to recreate those things from scratch. They're there, ready to be consumed, and it's critical that we start moving our applications towards using those ready-made services and building blocks that are managed by managed service providers, so your business can concentrate on developing applications for a line of business as opposed to caring about the under-the-hood IT. And we've got to be realistic. At this point in time, the vast majority of the applications that are in the enterprise space are still not cloud native. At a rough guess, I would say 95% of the applications are non-cloud native, and that's probably somewhat generous. So we still got to be aware that we've got a significant portion of work to do in order to transform, replace, refactor those applications to get them to a cloud-native space. Data consolidation. So separation of the code from data is absolutely key, and especially when we start looking at technologies such as Kubernetes, where essentially the code base is running in a pod. That pod can be killed, and it can be recreated as many times as you like. It can be scaled up, it can be scaled down. The data mustn't be affected from that. So separating code from data is absolutely crucial at this stage, and it's a real difficult task to do with legacy applications. But we also have to look at centralization and normalization of that data in order to then effectively apply analytics. If anyone's worked with sort of the AI ML type of technologies, machine learning, it's somewhat of a area where there's a lot of experimentation required. You're not always sure about the viability of a particular idea being modelable in an effective way through machine learning. So experimentation is required, and we need to build capabilities where we can do proof of concepts, but very rapidly take a proof of concept that we've shown to be working into a production level application. And it's probably worthwhile mentioning from an AI ML perspective and analytics as a whole. It's a bi-directional relationship in terms of the way whether it drives the business or the business drives it. So your practices from AI ML perspective have got to be able to respond to business demand and be able to model things and predict things as the business requires. But equally, we've got to be open to the challenges that information and analytics-led sources can lead to us changing our business models. Automation, again, is an absolute key theme throughout this presentation in being able to automate as much of the processes because your agility is highly dependent on it. And we're getting to a space at the moment where more and more things are getting easier to automate. And we've got to ensure things like quality assurance, testing, and the security side are really effectively addressed through the automation piece. And CI/CD is one answer. CI/CD is a methodology. CI/CD enables you to encode your business rules and practices, your security capabilities, testing from our own internal perspective. For example, when we're developing our cloud platforms, our CI/CD pipelines actually include a whole set of security testing around scanning the code for quality, for inadvertent insertion of vulnerabilities, for upstream reliance on upstream libraries that may have vulnerabilities included within them, and the QA side of things equally. So we want to get to a point where an application developer checking code in automatically triggers a whole set of pipelines that will automatically give you to a point where you have confidence that code is sufficiently tested to directly deploy into production. That's where you get your agility from. And that's got to cover security and the technology and everything else to do with it. It's got to be policy driven. Again, going back to the point of being able to encode business rules, policies, legislative rules, policies, all of those things in a way where they can programmatically be tested as part of your ability to deploy and also to build your solutions. And we've got to adopt all the cloud native technologies. So those who are familiar with the Kubernetes space probably understand the analogy of cattle versus pets. When we look at the current existing set of applications we're dealing with, enterprise applications are typically very stateful. We really care about the state of our virtual machines and our servers. If they die, they take things down with them that affects our business. In cloud native world, we are in a completely different scenario. We don't patch a server. We create a new pod. We create a new pod. We start directing some of the traffic towards that pod. If it's successful and it's not failing, we start diverting all of the traffic to the new pod, and we get rid of the old one. So mentality-wise, it's a mindset shift. Your application development and QA processes is a shift and actually gaining agility, but has a reliance on your applications being architected in a way where they're able to support that kind of mechanism. And your operational practices has got to be aligned to being able to do that kind of testing, to be able to understand the effect of introducing a new version of a service and directing a portion of the canary testing, for example. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And I mentioned this before around the X as a service, whatever it is as a service, adoption of those in order to accelerate the actual application development process. So the cloud challenge. We are transforming far more than the IT. We're barely skirting around the edges of the non-IT elements in this particular presentation, but there are cultural shifts that need to happen. There are business processes that need to happen, the security processes, the legislative stuff that we've got to deal with. When we look at our typical customer scenarios of what they go through when they start looking at transformation and moving to public cloud, quite often the starting point is looking at their regulatory and compliance needs. That typically forms some sort of a concept or architecture around what they need to do for security and their networking, and usually it's fairly traditional based rather than cloud native approaches that are adopted, because at that stage all of us are in the same boat. We haven't quite learned what we need to be doing. Then we start looking at selective applications being transformed or adopting ready-made cloud-native applications in order to satisfy our needs. So we then end up in a position where we've got selective applications are on public cloud. The rest of our environment is still in a non-cloud native mode and not on-prem. And it is usually at this stage that most businesses that we have been working with have a realization that the pace of public cloud adoption is far, far slower than they would like. And in order to accelerate that, most organizations go down the path of looking at lift and shift. There's a few problems. So we've got our existing application space, the legacy applications or traditional application space, which is now cloud native, traditional operations around it, traditional security around it. You're talking about change control boards, cabs, people approving changes being applied into production. And now we've got a set of applications which are completely different in the way they're being managed, and they're cloud native, living in public cloud. So one or two things can happen. You either enforce your existing IT processes on top of your cloud native stuff that's been deployed on public cloud, in which case you are reducing the agility of that entire solution, or you end up in a mixed mode of operations where the cloud native stuff is dealt with in a different way to your on-prem or traditional applications. And if it's not planned upfront really well, you end up with an inconsistent application of controls. So governance, IT governance, technical governance, security governance, you can end up in a position where you have a complete mismatch and inability to consciously say that you've applied your governance practices equally across the board. So when we start looking at a holistic hybrid cloud, and I intentionally keep putting the word holistic here because it's much more than just the cloud platforms themselves. When we start looking at a holistic hybrid cloud ecosystem, what does it do? It extends and brings the cloud to your premises. Simplistic. Allows you to do a coexistent model and a bimodal mode of operations. So we have to delve into that much more. But there are certain characteristics that these clouds need to have in order to enable that. But they also enable us, at least in the short term, to protect our existing investments. And we have a hell of a lot of customers who are going through this journey to public cloud. And the reality of the situation is, and this is not uncommon, we talk to them and they've got a 10-year lease on a data center that cannot be changed overnight. They've got that existing investment, and finding a way where we are protecting that existing investment is critical. And I think hybrid clouds is one way to address that in the short term. So what are the characteristics of a hybrid cloud in order to enable those things? These are opinionated, need to be open standards and native API based. By that I mean, for example, open source. Standard APIs that are not proprietary, and that is to enable essentially integration with orchestration tools, with CMP tools that are available out there without getting locked in. You need true hybrid capability in order such that if you start developing your applications on the private cloud element of a hybrid, you don't have to spend the same R&D or application development time to then transform them to run on public. You want to do the development work once. You do it once in a true hybrid cloud environment. You should be able to have full portability in order to move them to public cloud when the rest of the processes and things that you need to change within the organization are ready for it. CI/CD and policy-driven architecture, we've talked about already. Absolutely crucial that your hybrid cloud solutions are able to support these methodologies. And again, it goes back to the point of being able to present out standardized, non-proprietary, open APIs. That means that whatever work you do in developing your CI/CD pipelines, again, is reusable regardless of what cloud you're running on. And this is another key point. So we still have got our existing traditional IT service processes. They're not going to go away overnight, and we need to maintain those services and processes in order to ensure our governance is still there. So we still need a way of bridging the old and the new. So a true hybrid cloud solution needs to give you the capability whereby you're integrating your ITIL processes, your ITSM tool sets with that platform, but in a way where it's not affecting agility and the ability to use CI/CD capabilities. It's a hard thing to do, but I think that is an absolute crucial requirement for a true hybrid cloud solution. Many of you know adoption of public cloud. Again, it's a topic that is driven sometimes by emotion. To be truly successful in adopting cloud, your developers need to love working in that environment. They need to see an advantage. They need to see a different way of working. They have to like it. If they don't like it, they will go and do something else. That's the reality. We've seen adoption of public cloud come about in pockets of line of business applications within our clients purely because the developers like the ecosystem that they have on public cloud. So to make a hybrid cloud successful, we need to ensure we are providing the developers with the same set of capabilities, the same set of tools that they actually want to use, and helps them to develop their applications on-prem. So why is it different this time? There's been so many iterations of technologies changing, new things coming along. We had virtualization 10 years back coming along, and with the promises that would completely transform the way we do businesses. I do think we're at the unique point at the moment. We've got a real convergence of the infrastructure, application and security, technologies, methodologies, all of those things coming together. So DevSecOps, CI/CD capabilities, automated QA, cloud native, stateless applications, AI, ML, analytics, all of these things have come to converge at the same time to enable us to do a far more successful sort of transformation than we were able to do before. And a hybrid cloud environment has got to enable you to take advantage of all of those technologies, and it has to actually drive the usage of those technologies. So we've only barely touched on these things, but there's a hell of a lot of new technologies. There's a hell of a lot of new processes, new ways of thinking about things. There's a lot of learning to be done by the entirety of our organizations. It's challenging. It's really crucial, I think, for everyone to think about working with trusted partners that can help them work through some of these challenges, bring the right skills to the table, help organizations adapt their existing application development practices to be DevSecOps based, teach you about the technologies where it's necessary, and adopt all of these things. I think it's crucial to try to avoid all of the typical pitfalls by getting help from your trusted partners. In our case, when we have a partnership between someone that is helping you transform your business and the cloud provider, it's a three-way partnership, which brings a lot more value. So I'm going to quickly summarize the stuff that we talked about today. Transformation is at every level. It's not just in the technology space. It is in the people space. It is in the culture of the organization. It is the entirety of your business processes, your security processes, your application development processes. So it is at every single level. But this is the price of getting agility. If you want your businesses to be agile and be able to compete and come up with those differentiated offerings, this is the sort of transformation that needs to be taking place. We need to get to a place where we're able to encode business processes, our governance, our security, all into automated ways of being applying those. So CI/CD through automated policy enforcement, again, we have to ensure that whatever solutions we put forward are capable of supporting these things. Hybrid clouds can significantly accelerate movement to cloud, public cloud, cloud overall, adoption of cloud. Why? Because they allow you to parallelize your activities. So if you look at that typical scenario that I was talking through earlier, where we were talking to the legislators or governing bodies, see what we're allowed to do, looking at changing our security practices, looking at changing our network practices. Once we've done that, we start doing pockets of applications. If you have a hybrid cloud environment to do your development work on, and it's got all of the same capabilities or the vast majority of the core capabilities that you need for your developers to do cloud-native application development, but on-prem within the confines of your own security space, your existing network space, etc., you're parallelizing that set of activities. So by nature, you're going to shorten the timescales required to do the overall transformation. And it's kind of leading by example. When it comes to bringing the legislators or auditing bodies alongside with you, you have real-life examples running on-prem that are compliant to the existing security requirements, but also demonstrate what can be done. We talked about the hybrid clouds needing to provide the right ecosystem that developers want to adopt. And they've got to be developer-centric. If we don't hit that piece, like I said, your developers will go elsewhere, do it some other way. And we end up with that mixed governance model and an inability to apply the right level of governance controls. We're all of us, including me, on a learning journey continuously. These technologies, some of these technologies are bleeding edge. They're developing every day. Something new happens, something new functionality comes out. So it's working with your trusted partners in order to accelerate and de-risk that transformation. So I'm really proud and excited to present the Atos Open Hybrid Cloud Platform, which was launched on Tuesday morning at this event. I'm going to try to keep the marketing elements of this to a bare minimum. But in short, OHC is a managed hybrid cloud platform that at a base level provides both IaaS and Kubernetes in the same box, which means you have dynamic scaling between the two. It provides SaaS and PaaS services that are mirroring what is on GCP. Database as a service, big data as a service, AI, ML. It has got hybrid capabilities, so I'm sure you've seen the keynote speeches on Anthos. Anthos is embedded within this product, and you're able to use this product in both true private mode. So if you're not quite ready to open up your network and have a true hybrid capability, you can start off with it being private and dynamically change configuration to move it into a hybrid mode. OHC is cost optimized. It is entirely based on open source technologies, and we have been working with our partners, Google, to ensure the set of technologies that we built on this platform are API compatible. And to, again, going back to the point of being able to develop your applications once and deploy them into any cloud, that's the work that we've been doing for the past 4 months in order to ensure that interoperability. And from a DevOps perspective, all the APIs are available for consumption. The native APIs, there are no proprietary APIs. Everything that is on the platform is open standards. All the third-party tools for orchestration, CMPs, etc., all integrate with it out of the box. It is really intended as a gateway to accelerate move to public cloud, and it is extremely developer-centric. So like I said, all of the APIs are fully exposed at, and they are the native APIs. We are the first Google partner to implement Anthos on top of OpenStack. There's a lot of advantages on that front, including their cost side of things, but it does allow us to offer a platform which is a combination of the IaaS and the CaaS side of things, but more crucially, the ecosystem that you see on the screen. It isn't just the hosting elements of a cloud platform. It is all the data services, the key data services that any application developer developing microservices would want to use. And above and beyond that, you got capabilities around AI, ML. There's variants of this in terms of the the hardware models where we've got very high-end GPU acceleration. So again, you can do even the Kubeflow and AI/ML aspects of it on this platform. The solution itself incorporates the concept of a policy engine. Policy engine, and let me be clear about this because there's a lot of different uses of the word policy engine. Many people think of it in terms of identity access management. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about policies that represent genuine business level policies. So take an example. An application has got a requirement to be PCI DSS compliant. So that application can be tagged to be PCI DSS compliant. Your pipelines and your policy engine must prevent that application being deployed on top of a platform which is not PCI DSS compliant. And when it gets down to the level of the actual technical components and the way the services are delivered and the characteristics of that platform, that's where the policy enforcement comes in and is able to discern whether this platform is suitable to deploy such an application on top of. It could be more simplistic than that, geofencing. So we know many countries around the world have got policies about certain data not leaving their premises. We're able to, for example, apply a geofencing policy that says the application can be deployed in this particular instance of a private cloud or in that region of a public cloud, but not others. So we're talking about the high-level, business-level policies, which then our solution translates into a much lower level, granular technical implementation of those policies. So there's a couple of more elements I want to touch upon. So we talked earlier on about a hybrid cloud integrating with existing ITIL processes, ITSM tool sets. So we have created a level of abstraction in this specifically for that purpose. So we have a set of message buses, which are actually based on Google PubSub, where we are able to publish all of the messages from event alerting and CMDB perspective. So you create a new instance of a virtual machine, or you create a new Kubernetes cluster, or you spin up a new applications on Kubernetes. The events will be published so they can be consumed by existing tool sets, so you can still apply your auditing and compliance using your existing tool sets. The solution itself has not got a reliance to manage services around the solution or DevOps mode and don't have a reliance on those ITSM tools, but it does allow that bimodal operation and marrying up the existing ITIL processes with the DevOps side of things. So talking about that message bus and the PubSub, we have an implementation of PubSub within this platform itself. We worked with Google to actually create a solution whereby we got 100% API compatible version of PubSub running fully locally. And in hybrid mode, it creates a connection to GCP and gives you a single message bus across GCP and your private cloud. It's a really powerful concept because it does mean that events, all of those types of things, again, can be correlated and collected in a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud scenario, centralized, viewed, analyzed. All of those things become possible when you've got ability to span with one set of technologies, message buses across one or more clouds. The managed databases, managed big data services, again, these are accelerators, and because they're API compatible with the Google services, it's the same concept of write the application once, and you're able to deploy and consume it in multiple clouds, private or on-premise or on public. So we've got demos of our platform in the stall. I would really welcome you to come and join us. So these are live demos. They're not pre-recorded. We got a number of different ones. We got an overview where we just show you around what the product looks like and what the APIs that it offers and the user interface within it. We demonstrate a hybrid application being deployed onto the private cloud, the same hybrid application being deployed to public cloud, and then we split that application into multiple parts. So the front-end web services, for example, run on GCP using an Istio service mesh, communicating back to database services running on-prem. So your data stayed on-prem, your web services scalable, burst out, if you like, into public. So it's quite powerful stuff. And we have got a demo of Anthos, so we can actually go into Google Console. We see the private cloud as appearing as a region within the GCP console. You can go into the marketplace. You can select an application from marketplace and deploy it directly onto the private cloud. It's quite a powerful thing to be able to use the marketplace, all of the work that goes into creating these templated applications and being able to reuse those regardless of the fact that you're running on-prem.